Hello. Um, Thought I'd try making a video. I've got lots of random FPL thoughts I've been thinking. Lots of lessons that I've learned so far. This first part of the season, or things I've been thinking, and I've got a bunch of like Wildcard 6 thoughts. It's all very messy in my brain. I just thought I'd kind of spew it all out, see what happens. I think my audio recording is a bit dodged as well. It's all a bit distorted, so hopefully that will hold up as well. I'm just going to give it a go. Yeah, Wildcard 6, I'll come on to that in a minute. One of the lessons I've been thinking recently is so we can roll transfers now over wildcards, whereas last season, use it or lose it. So and how does that affect things? And I kind of feel like when it comes to wildcards, we used to be able to do one week punts before a wildcard. I heard somebody say that do 1 week punts still make sense now that we can roll them. And I was thinking about this, and it seems to me like something's changed here now because I've seen a lot of people like using a lot of transfers before a wild card, and it seems to me like the power of a free transfer before a wild card now is less than it was. So, like last season, when you had a wild card and you had one or two transfers leading up to it, it was use it or lose it. So obviously it made sense that you should use it, and you should do some 1 week punts because it was use it or lose it, pretty much. Whereas now you don't lose it. And using a transfer for a player who you're going to bring in on a wild card anyway, or even just a 1 week punt, it seems to have less value because, like the other side of a wild card, you use a free transfer. When you bring a player in, you're getting multiple game weeks out of them. You're getting a lot more bang for your buck. Whereas before a wild card, you're not getting as much value from that free transfer anymore. Basically, the situation I was in was I was wondering whether to wildcard in 7 or 6. But if I was wildcarding in 7, I would have been bringing in Gabriel and Bomo, maybe selling Isaac for somebody as well. And I would have used my free transfers to bring in players who I was going to be bringing in wildcard anyway, and Bomo and Gabriel especially. And so it's why would you bring in Bomo and Gabriel in 6 and then do a wild card and bring them in anyway? In that, it's almost like a waste of those transfers. So the value of those transfers are like much less now. And whereas if I wildcard in 6 and just bring them in there, I can actually start game week 7 with my free transfers. Whereas if I'd wildcarded in 7, I would have only had one free transfer in 8, and I would have used some of those free transfers to bring in Gabriel and Mbomo, who I would have had in wildcard 7 as well. So it seems to me like the value of your free transfers before a wildcard is like it's lessened. It's the opposite. Like last season, it was use it or lose it. So they're actually, you get these one game week punts, and it makes sense. And I still think before a wildcard, if you've got a massive red flag and only got 10 starters and a crap bench, so you have to make a transfer, then it makes sense. And by definition, it will be a 1 week punt, unless you're bringing in a player who you want long term anyway, and their price is going up, something like that. But generally, it's a 1 week punt. That makes sense. But anything else, if you don't absolutely have to bring a player in before a wildcard, it's almost as though you should be slowing down using your free transfers as you approach a wildcard, because your value of the free transfers is getting less and less, because you're getting less and less bang for your buck for your transfers. Whereas the other side of a transfer, your free transfers count for more. I don't know if I'm right in thinking like this. That's just a thought that has started to occur to me a bit. So I've ended up wildcard 6, and now I've got 3 free transfers the other side. Because my plan was to try and get to 5 free transfers for 12, because 12 seems to be like a big fixture swing. I want to have a mini wildcard there. If I wildcard in 6, 3 free transfers in 7, and another 6 game weeks, that's 9 transfers. I can spend 4 of them and still get 5 free transfers for 12. Whereas if I wildcarded in 7, I would have only had 1 free transfer for 8, and that would have only been 5 game weeks. I would have had to have rolled every game week to have got to 5 free transfers for 12. So that's just something I've been thinking of. Transfers around a wildcard, and as you go into a wildcard, they just seem to be less valuable. You should probably hold on to them rather than using them, and save them for the other side of a wildcard. And I said some people at the start of the season were saying that they were going to start the game week and then make no transfers at all, and then wildcard 3 or 4, and have 3 or 4 saved transfers, and I can see the sense in that now a little bit more. So, yeah, that's just one thought I've been thinking. On the same topic of being able to roll transfers as well, I posted this earlier, and I just thought I'd mention it again. This was just another lesson I learned where this may be obvious to some people, but for me it was like it just clicked in my head. So in last season we had a 2 game week window. You could roll 2 transfers. This time it's like 5. You get up to 5. And if you imagine your whole season and you just split every transfer you make into urgent transfers and luxury transfers, obviously it's a spectrum, but if you imagine there are some transfers, it's just a red flag, you've got to make the transfer, and then other times it's a luxury, Saka to Palmer, whatever, luxury transfers. You imagine them like this. When you've got this 2 game week window going down, and you just imagine it, each game week is that window is just scrolling down your season. Every now and then you're going to have one game week where you don't really need to make any transfers, so you don't, maybe you roll. Then the next game week you don't have to make any transfers. Well, it's use it or lose it. That use it or lose it mechanism hits again. It strikes there, just as it does with the chips. It does with the 2 game week window. And so you're going to be having to make luxury transfers much more often. Which is, if you were to line up all these transfers and rate them from most urgent to most luxury, ideally you want to make all of the most urgent transfers, and that's it. Just start from top to bottom. But when you've got this 2 game week window, you're going to end up making suboptimal transfers, some of the really luxury transfers that you didn't need to make just because it's just a small window. Whereas now we've got a 5 game week window, it's much more likely that if you just wait and just don't make any of these luxury transfers, at some point in that 5 game week window, urgent transfers are going to pop up again. They're going to happen. You're going to get some red flags. And then you can just make sure that you always use it on that. And at the very least, you could just wait. If you get to the 5 game weeks and you've got 5 free transfers banked up, then you can use it on your luxury transfers then. But this mechanism should mean that you never have to make luxury transfers. And you should always be able to catch your urgent transfers. In theory, that's like the way I'm trying to view it. I could be wrong. I'm often wrong, but this is just the way I'm thinking about it. So far this season, every time I've thought of a luxury transfer, like a Saka to Parma or some kind of sideways transfer, I've been avoiding it and just trying to wait for the big ones, the Nkunkus. I did do Solanke out. That probably wasn't totally urgent, but I did do Solanke out. So yeah, that 5 game week window catches a lot of the. You should be able to catch all the urgent transfers, and you shouldn't. So I'm just avoiding all the luxury transfers now. So in theory, I shouldn't have to take any hits this season. I think something like that. I don't know. Again, these are all foggy thoughts. That's something I've been thinking about. What else did I want to talk about then? So another thing I was thinking of as well is at the start of the season, I started with 1 million in the bank, and I thought to myself, that's nice flexibility, So if players go up 0.1 and another player goes down, I'm not going to be priced out. And also it gives me room to go up and down 0.5 million or just up 0.5 million of any player. So I've got a 5 mil player, and then I want to get to a 5.5 player, but he's gone up to 5.6. With that 1 million, I've got flexibility all around my team to get to places. And it was like really nice, 1 million in the bank, nice flexibility. But then I started making transfers, and as I was trying to think of my transfer options, every time I spent that 1 million, I thought, oh no, I'm not going to have that flexibility anymore. But then I thought, what's the point in having that 1 million if you just keep it for the whole season? If you just have the whole season, you've got 1 million in your bank for flexibility, but you never use it. It's no point having it, is it? So again, this is maybe obvious to some people. This is just something that hit me, was like, you may as well spend it. So the only time to have flexibility is probably just during periods of unpredictability. So maybe at the start of the season, made sense, have 1 million there. Possibly there might be some other periods of the season where it makes sense, but generally you should probably use all that 1 million budget. I mean, we've got transfers as well. You're only ever like 2 transfers away from changing your budget anyway and mixing things around. So I think you should probably push that budget all the time, as much as you can. Otherwise, it's a bit of a waste. The idea of keeping it for flexibility is probably only makes sense at the start of the season, I think. And coupled with that is the transfers as well, like this idea of banking transfers just in case. The whole idea of having 3 or 4 or 5 free transfers banked up just in case, and having a feeling of security about that. It doesn't really make any sense if you never use them. If you've just constantly got this bank of transfers, it doesn't really make sense. So you may as well use them, and you should probably be pushing it so you've only ever got 1 or 2 free transfers stacked up, possibly. The only times I can think it would make sense to have free transfers banked up is when you've got a game week like game week 12 where you want to make them in one game week. There's a specific game week, there's a big fixture swing. That would make sense. Or again, a period of unpredictability, like in a period between a wild card and a bench boost, where you don't want to get too many injuries, so you bank up 5 free transfers for that, just in case you get injuries there. But generally, I think you should be maxing out your budget and maxing out your transfers, probably. I'm thinking, yeah, something like that. I mean, obviously, so for me, from 6 to 12, I'm going to be trying to save a few because I want to have 5 for 12, but I should have loads. I should have 3 plus another 6. I'm predicting you get about a red flag once every other game week. So I've got 9 in 6 game weeks. There should be about 3 red flags. So I've got 1 luxury transfer, 3 red flags, 5 for 12. That's what I'm thinking. That's just rough numbers. Anyway, so yeah, that was another thought I was thinking. What was another lesson I learned? Price drops. This isn't a lesson I've learned. This is just more of a question. If anybody has an answer to, let me know. But when you have price drops in your team, my team value is shocking. So I got, like, if I sell all my players right now, I'm on 99.9. So I've actually lost 0.1 million since the start of the season. I've had 5 price drops, but only 4 price rises, which is annoying, especially as I kind of consider myself somebody who likes to go after price changes. Excuse the pink. I didn't have any blue left. Anyway, so price drops. I've had 5, and sometimes one regret I've had so far this season is Nkunku was 6.5. He went down to 6.4, and I didn't sell him to Rodgers because I was dilly-dallying. I wasn't sure whether to sell him to Rodgers or on Bomo. I wanted extra time, and I regret that. I was undervaluing how much 0.1 is worth, and I should have just bit the bullet. I knew it was going to go to Rodgers. Had a feeling it was Rodgers and Solanke to Watkins, and I let Nkunku drop to 6.4, and I lost 0.1. I regret that. I shouldn't have done that. So those kind of weren't times I think you should go and make the transfer. But then there's been a lot of times when I've had a player who's just like sitting on the bench, like Mykolenko, who's gone down to 4.4. I don't need to transfer him. Should I transfer? In fact, there are other times like players like Eze who I actually want to keep. So Eze went down to 6.9, but I wanted to keep him. I didn't want to sell him. So I just bit that. I just ate that transfer, that price drop, and he's not going back up again. So that's a shame. I got some points out of him. Watkins was one that went down and then back up again, so that was fine. But some players like Mykolenko, sitting on my bench, he goes down to 4.4. Should I have just used a transfer and just sell him for like another 4.5, like Konza or something like that, just anybody, even though he's sitting on my bench? Like doing a bench transfer. Somebody's on your bench. If you had like a 4.0 bench player who's just sitting on your bench and he goes down to 3.9, should you use a transfer to just get another 4.0 just so you don't lose that 0.1? Or is that a waste of a transfer? And I've done other videos on 0.1. I think at the start of the season, it probably is worth about 2 points over the course of the whole season, at least. So, for, using a transfer, should you consider it like a 4-point hit down the road? Maybe, yeah. I don't know. At the moment, I'm not doing those transfers. At the moment, I'm thinking those ones I would just eat the price drop. I'm kind of just hunching it. Most past seasons I've played much more riskily, but this season I'm feeling a bit more Fabio Borghese and kind of conservative, and just like he never chases price changes at all. And I kind of feel like I want to just try that a bit more this season. So yes, I've let them drop. So I've dropped 5. I've only got 4 price rises. Yeah, so don't know about that. I've been looking at other people's teams and they've got like 1 million more than me already, and that's quite a big amount. So yeah, it's just a question. Haven't actually solved that one yet, but that's just a question. Other lessons. Yeah, so in Kunku, that was a rookie error I made. I don't like making rookie errors. Another rookie error I've made. Wildcard 6, trying to chase some price changes. Forgot to bring Diaz in. He's going to go up twice. I didn't bring him in because I didn't think I was going to keep him. I was just bringing in players who I was likely or possibly going to keep. But Diaz is going to go up twice. I should have just bought him in, got his price, got that 0.1, and then sold him again. And that was a bit of a rookie error. I mean, I'm not sure where I would have brought him in because I don't think I want to sell Smith-Rowe or Rodgers. Eze to Mbomo was a definite, and he's gone up. I had to catch that one. I could have sold Salah for Diaz. That's the one I probably should have done, but I may even keep Salah yet. I don't know. So that was the thing. Maybe McNeil, but anyway, little rookie error there. But I did get Jackson, and he might go up 0.2 yet, hopefully. Although I'm not sure yet. But if he goes up 0.2, I could just sell him, bank the 0.1. Little rookie error, and then I think one more lesson I've learnt. I think, one more lesson, then we'll get onto the wild card. Is I just learnt this. FPL Raptor posted something about Maddison, and I just learned that there's a difference between XA and XAG. I have been using XAG all this time, not even realising that there's a difference. I just use FBref data. And there it is, XA and XAG. So I just thought that was it. But basically, XAG is if a player passes to Salah and then a really just sideways pass, edge of his box, and then Salah does an 80-yard run and scores this like really high XG chance, 0.8. This guy who did a crappy little pass here gets 0.8 XAG, I think. This is from what I've heard. He gets 0.8 XAG, even though Salah did all the work. Whereas XA, if this player does a perfect pass into the box, really, really good pass, but then Salah ends up making it more difficult, going outside the box and actually scoring from a really low XG chance of like 0.01 XG or something. This player only gets 0.01 XG if it's XAG. But with XA, he'll get much higher score because it's based just on the pass, not on what Salah does, what on the attacker does, the shooter. I think that's my interpretation. And yeah, apparently Maddison's doing much better. I think it's on here. If you go to passing, I think on FBref, yes, it's got XAG and XA. And James Maddison's right at the top here on 2.9 XA, but his XAG is only 1.3. And I think XA is a much better, that sounds to me from what I can tell is a much better metric to be using for FPL purposes. That really gets more of a sense of how good a player is. They're the passes that he's doing. It's irregardless of how well the other players are finishing his chances. So yeah, that was another thing I learned. So I'm going to have to update all my models, I think, and try and use XA in future rather than XAG. So that is some lessons I've been learning. And then another lesson, and this is going on to the wild card, is Haaland and captaincy. I made a video about why I wasn't going to plan to bring Haaland in. I've changed my mind, I'm afraid. I think I have changed my mind, and I think it is captaincy was the blind spot. I said at the end of that video that might have been a blind spot, and I've thought about it a bit more. Again, I could be wrong, but the way I'm viewing captaincy now is that if you think Haaland's going to score 9 points a game, and you think Salah's going to score 8 points a game average, then I think that difference of 1 point, you have to add that onto Haaland's score again. He's actually really going to be like 10. Because before I was just thinking, there's all these players, they're all scoring points, and captaincy is just whoever you think is going to get the most points. I didn't really think about captaincy. Pardon me, burping. But yeah, so if you think Haaland's going to get 9 points a game, Salah 8 points a game, then you're actually getting that 1 point difference doubled. Because if in one scenario you're captaining Salah, the other scenario you're captaining Haaland in every game, and that's their averages, then that points difference of 1 is actually getting doubled. You're doing that again. And so I think you have to add that 1 point difference to Haaland's score. And so really he's getting 10 points a game rather than 9 points a game, is the way I'm viewing it right now. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, if I've made my maths wrong. And so at the start of the season, it wasn't too bad because Haaland and Salah were predicted quite similar points and they both had similar fixtures. So it was probably quite even. So it made sense to go without Haaland. Obviously that backfired because Haaland did amazing. Salah did well for the first 3, 4 and 5, not so good. But going forward, the problem now is that Haaland's playing better than Salah now a little bit, and he's also got much better fixtures, whereas Salah's got tougher fixtures. And so that gap between Haaland and Salah is probably going to get bigger. And the bigger that gap gets between Haaland and the next best captaincy choices, the more you have to put that, you're doubling that gap. You know, if Haaland ends up averaging 9, 10 points a game and Salah's averaging 7 points a game or something, then you're really adding that extra 3 points above to Haaland, I think. So that's just how I'm starting to think of captaincy. Sometimes I watch videos and people talk about captaincy and I feel like I've missed a lecture or something. Like I feel like they're on a different page. But I think I'm starting to see what they're talking about now. Maybe. So yeah, captaincy you're doubling the difference. Whoever you think is going to be the best captaincy choice, you have to double that difference, however higher they are over everybody else, I think. So I'm going to be bringing in Haaland probably. I'd still love to go against him. I just love the team without him. You can just get like every other player you want without Haaland. It makes the team feels more flexible, feels more, I don't know. It's nice. And I just like the idea of going against him. I've heard that there are some AI teams that have gone against him still, but with that logic now with the captaincy thing, I don't think I will. I also hate the fact that I just know that I'm going to kill it. Like as soon as I buy Haaland, he's going to blank. Just like what the Salah people did. Everybody bought Salah in game week 4 and then he just stops performing. And but I don't know. I don't think you can think like that. So here's some drafts. Let's have a look at some drafts then of what I'm likely to do. So this was kind of one that I started off with. I want to talk about fixture tickers in a minute as well because that's something else that I kind of want to mention. This is one draft that I started off with though. So most drafts have a kind of template 6 or 7 players that like everybody's got, and then it's these periphery players we're all moving around. It's Raya, Gabriel, and Trent. It's Saka and Bomo, and it's Haaland, and then maybe Watkins Wood. These front 3 were like locked for me at first, but I think if you get rid of Wood, you can get rid of Watkins. You can make some other changes, but if you start with that, like Raya, Gabriel, Trent, Saka and Bomo, Haaland, and I think Wood is now probably nailed for me. I was just starting to lean towards him. I wish he hadn't taken that penalty because I was probably going to go for him anyway. But now he's on pens. I think a lot of people will go for Wood now. Maybe not, but he's quite locked for me now. And then Watkins, but the problem with this, I haven't got that much team value, so I have to have like 3 5-mil players. So it'll be Smith-Rowe, Rodgers, then either McNeil, Semenyo, probably McNeil or Semenyo, the other 2. And then in defence, it's going to be like a rotation of two 4.5s and then a 4. 0.7 left in the bank. I could go for another 4.5. It's that kind of thing. And then Raya. That's the kind of situation. With the Watkins situation, if you sell Watkins, you can either have Watkins and McNeil, or you can do, if you go down to Solanke, you can get Eze. Or this is what I can do. If I can do it, everybody else can do it because I've got a crap budget. And you can probably do better than this, but it's that idea. So Watkins and McNeil or Solanke and Eze, or if you go from Watkins all the way down to Calvert-Lewin, then you can get Eze and a Pedro Porro maybe, which I quite like. So you could have a Raya, Gabriel, Trent, Porro back 3, just have some bench players, 4.5 backups. Saka and Bomo, Eze, Smith-Rowe, Rodgers, Haaland, and then Calvert-Lewin and Wood. And Calvert-Lewin can be Pedro if you want. That kind of thing. Yeah, what else do I want to say about that though? But I don't love it. It's very template as well. This feeling of the team being very template. It's not super template, but these core players. If you wanted to go against some of them, like Raya in goal, I might be tempted to go for if I wasn't going to go for Raya, I'd go for Sales and Sanchez as a rotation. I think I should probably get into the fixture tickers in a minute. But that is one thing that you could do. Gabriel and Trent just feel locked. The only way I'd get rid of Trent is if I wanted Salah. There was one draft where I squeezed Salah in. So you go Wood, Calvert-Lewin, Haaland. You get Salah in instead of that Eze spot. So that's quite nice. But then you have to get rid of Trent. Really, it's either Trent, Saka, or Mbomo has to go down if you want to get Salah in. Because you need to just get this money from somewhere. And then you've got a couple of 4.0s, 4.5s. Oh, and then in goal you have to have just one 4.5. It's quite a lot of sacrifices to have Haaland and Salah for me. So that's probably not going to happen. And then another draft I looked at with the no Haaland drafts as well. The no Haaland drafts just feel so nice because if you go right the way down to just Wood, Calvert-Lewin and Pedro, who are all penalty takers, aren't they? And something I like about these types of players is they're not in Europe. I was listening to Always Cheating podcast and they mentioned something about you should just try and pick players from the best teams. But actually, I'm kind of thinking the thing I like about the teams that aren't in the top six and stuff, they're not in Europe, and so you don't have any of that headache of rotation. They're much fresher. Don't know, I like it. So if you just did that, then you can get Salah, Saka, and Mbomo, Palmer midfield with Rodgers, and Porro, Trent, Gabriel, Raya. Like the rest of your team is just. That seems to me like the best defense. Raya, Gabriel, Trent, and Porro. In my mind, I'm just like they're locked. And then you could get Palmer, Mbomo, Saka, Salah, Rodgers as your five. And then if you just put those three up front, 0.3 in the bank, it pushes your budget. It's tempting. The only thing about that is I'm not totally sold on Pedro. Maybe game week 12, I might turn to this, but I'm not as sold on Pedro as most people. I'll just talk about this now while I'm there. But like Pedro, he's always been like a 0.3, 0.4 man his whole season, his whole time at Watford. I guess he got up to 0.7 last season, although he only kind of, his goals and assists was actually only 0.5. So it wasn't amazing. He's only 0.3-ish now, although his goals is 0.6. So I don't know, maybe people are seeing these glimmers of 0.6, 0.7 coming through. He's on pens. He seems like he's nailed. Maybe, hopefully, I don't know. I need more confirmation of that. But he's just, I don't know. I still see him as like this slightly 0.3 guy. And then the fixtures look really bad. And I suppose I should get onto that, which is that the fixtures for Brighton are, let's have a look for the forwards. They're second worst. So I've got them really low for fixtures. Very, very tough fixtures. Chelsea, Tottenham, Newcastle, Liverpool, Man City, and just Wolves is the only good fixture. So that puts me off Pedro. Yeah, let me get onto the fixture tickers in a minute. But yeah, so drafts, there's different ways to tinker around with the drafts. Yeah, let me talk about fixture tickers. So fixture tickers, one thing I've noticed a lot of people will only use versus only fixture tickers. So they don't take into consideration the strength or weakness of these teams. They just look at the strength of the opponents and then put a rating on it. And they also do it, they don't differentiate for forwards or defenders, which I think you should probably. So I've got like 4 tickers here. One is just based on the opponents. So, and this is going from game week 6 to 11, which I know Wildcard 6 it's going to be a long time. It's a long time before you're next on a wildcard. But by the time I get to game week 12, for me, I'm probably going to have about 9 transfers I'm going to use. So that's almost an entire team's worth of transfers I could potentially use in that period. So really, I'm just looking at 6 to 11 for now. That's good enough for me. And so you get teams like Everton at the top, Brentford, Nottingham Forest, Ipswich. This is for forwards. This is just based on a little bit of about 40% last season, about 60% this season's form. So for forwards, this will be the XGC of their opponents accumulated up, and for the defenders, it will be the XG of their opponents. Yeah, it's good enough for me. And again, you get teams like Ipswich are up there. People mention Brentford, Nottingham Forest, Everton. But some people are looking at things like this and picking Ipswich players and maybe Brentford defenders. Brentford defence is right at the top here, based on the XG of their opponents. But if you actually factor in the strength of this team as well, so with this defensive ticker, it's the XGC of this team plus the XG of their opponents divided by 2, so it's an average with a 10% home or away boost or deficit. Brentford are right at the bottom. Ipswich and Brentford are right at the bottom, so that puts me right off of Flecken and Leif Davis and Greaves and players like this and Van der Berg. Brentford are basically the XGA over the first 5 game weeks. Brentford and Ipswich are right at the bottom. So they're not doing very well. Now, Brentford have had some hard fixtures. Liverpool away, Man City away, Tottenham away. And over here, this is what they actually got in those games. So you can see the Crystal Palace and Southampton at home, they did a little better. So you might think that in good fixtures, maybe their numbers will get a bit better. Maybe so. So maybe it's worth going for Brentford. Ipswich, I'm not sure about though. Yeah, so but Brentford defence, that does put me off a bit. They might get a little better. But they're right at the bottom. And then Ipswich as well just looks really bad. Yeah. And what's this? So this is the forward ticker. What did I want to point out? I mean, Nottingham Forest at the top of this one as well. This is the Nottingham Forest's XGC taken into consideration. So they've got good fixtures and they're good defensively. So they're right at the top above Liverpool and Man City. So that's quite interesting. So I definitely want at least one representative Nottingham Forest defence in my team. If it's not Sales, then it'll be like Milinkovic or something like that. Murillo, Aina. Sorry, my video just froze up. The last 10 minutes of my last video all just got mushed. So I'm going to just re-say the basic gist of what I said in the last 10 minutes. Basically, so only other things I was mentioning was... something of note is Arsenal's XG and XGA so far this season. Their XGA has been 1.24, which is not that great. They've played Aston Villa, Tottenham and Man City away in that time. Although they conceded their most against Brighton at home. But then they had... The 2 games they conceded the most is when they had 10 men. And they've had a 0.5 and a 0.7 against Wolves and Tottenham. So I think you could probably assume that Arsenal's defence will get back on track to what it was last season, which was very good. And in terms of XG, they're actually 5th bottom, which is maybe... I don't know whether we should worry about that or not. They're 5th bottom. Last season, they were 3rd top for XG, so they had much better XG. This season, 5th bottom. They've played... They managed 2.1 against Brighton, so that was pretty good. But only 0.9 against Tottenham, 0.8 against Villa, 0.6 against Man City. But that's right, something like that. 0.6 against Man City and then 1.2 against Wolves. So it's not that great XG so far this season. And I don't know whether we should worry about that or not. I don't think it's enough to put me off Saka. And that's really the only question, isn't it, at the end of the day? Is Saka or... I mean, some people might go double Arsenal, I suppose. But... yeah, their XG hasn't been great so far. Do we think that will get better? Or is there something going on there? Not sure. But it does look a bit stark. They're 5th bottom so far. It might put you off captaining Saka, maybe. I don't know. Pardon me. So that's one thing to note. And then Nottingham Forest as well. XGA, so they're really good. They're 0.8. They're 3rd best so far this season. And they've been quite consistent. They've had fairly tricky fixtures. I mean, Liverpool, they only made 0.9 against Liverpool. Wolves, Bournemouth, Southampton, Brighton still kept it to 1 XGC. Somewhat easy fixtures or, difficult. They're moderate. Bournemouth are all right. So, yeah, Nottingham Forest are doing very well. And they were doing very well last season. They were like the 5th best XGC last season. And so when you think about like goalkeepers and clean sheets and things like this, Nottingham Forest have got great fixtures as well. They've got really good fixtures. So you might think, well, Nottingham Forest will get better. They've got better clean sheet odds. Arsenal are down here somewhere. Their XGC is not that great. and they've got reasonably tricky fixtures. Leicester, Southampton are good, but the rest of the other 4 are quite tricky. So would you think that Nottingham Forest will get more clean sheets? But I think there's something about Arsenal that it feels like there's something psychological where they just know how to get clean sheets. They've done it before. They're a bit more clinical. Whereas Nottingham Forest, even though they have low XGC, they seem to concede goals. Are they as good with the clean sheets? I can't remember where my video froze up, so I may repeat myself. But Nottingham Forest, I definitely want one Nottingham Forest defender in my team. Somewhere. If it's not Sells, then it'll be like Milenkovic, I think, or something, because they've got good fixtures, good defence. But in the question of like Raya versus Sells, if you wanted to punt against Raya, I was looking at this a little bit, and I think if this isn't very clear for video purposes, but if you think Raya will go back to what he did last season he was averaging 1.44 saves per 90 or 0.19 bonus per 90, whereas this season it's 4.6 saves per 90 and 1.2. If you think that's going to continue, then Raya's a no-brainer. But if you think he's going to go back to what he did last season, then it might be worth punting on a Sells. Sells is better value for money, only just. They're all kind of even. Sells is averaging about what he did last season, got much less bonus so far. I know he's got more bonus this season, but that's because of that Liverpool game. And Sanchez and Verbruggen, well, maybe not Verbruggen. I think Verbruggen's got too hard. These fixtures are too hard. This is all just me messing around. This isn't very... I was just trying to get a sense of who would be the best keeper, but I do think if Raya goes back to the Raya he was last season, where he wasn't getting any saves or bonus points, it was just 6s and 2s, then Sells might be able to keep up with save points, the odd bonus. So it might be worth a punt. You might be able to rotate him with Sanchez. A rotation with Sanchez would be, it's mainly just playing Sells, and then in 7, Nottingham Forest away to Chelsea, you might just go for Chelsea for that one, home to Nottingham Forest. And then in 12 and 14, Nottingham Forest against Arsenal, Man City away, Chelsea have Leicester and Southampton away. So that's basically the only times you play Sanchez. So you could just grin and bear it and just play Sells and a 4.0 if you really wanted the money. But yeah, that's one gamble you could go. But when I'm tinkering around with some of these drafts, I'm not sure I need to do that. So yeah, the drafts. Looking at all these drafts, I've got all these 5 mil mids, 4.5 defenders. There's a bit of a no man's land in between. There's quite a lot of good 5 to 6 mil picks. Like you got Smith-Rowe, Rodgers, McNeil, Semenyo, and who have I missed there? Semenyo, McNeil, Rodgers, Smith-Rowe. I'm sure there's somebody else, but Traore maybe. You got some Brentford, Sade, Carvalho. I don't know. There's a few picks there. Whereas then you go up to the premiums, that middle range of like, you got Eze, maybe he's not bad. I could go for Eze. Then you got like Jota and Diaz, but are they rotation risks now with Europe? You've got Bruno, but he always underperforms XG. I don't know whether I trust him. Bowen, West Ham are a bit dodge. Maddison maybe could be worth a punt with the XGA. He's got good XGA and that, and the XA even, sorry. But there's a bit of a no man's land in the middle. And so I'm almost tempted to just stick with these 5 mil players. Porro I wouldn't mind getting, maybe for a punt. I did think maybe I could start with Solanke and then go down to Watkins and bring in Porro. If you look at the fixtures, I'd really love to have Watkins for the Ipswich fixture here. And I think maybe Bournemouth as well. Bournemouth have got Southampton and Leicester in the first 2, similar to Arsenal. It'd be nice to maybe have a punt on Semenyo there and then switch him to like Smith-Rowe or maybe bench him. Smith-Rowe against Nottingham Forest, Man City is not great, but I wouldn't mind playing him at home to Aston Villa, Everton, Brentford, Crystal Palace. You almost want to switch there. So I may do some flipping around, or even Semenyo to McNeil, although actually I'd probably play McNeil from the start if I was going to go there. So I don't know. There may be some shifting around that you can do, but Watkins, yeah. So I might start with Watkins and then go to Solanke and try and bring Porro in or something, or go to Calvert-Lewin and bring Porro. I'll have a think. Yep. I think that's about it. So I'm going to end it there before my video freezes up again. Okay. Thanks for listening. See you later. Bye-bye.